defense game for the iPhone device. Now, this tutorial is going to be using Xcode and nothing but Xcode, not any predefined engine or anything like that. So if you have Xcode and you've tried making a few apps and you know how to program, but you really want to make a tower defense game and you can't really get started, then I think this series can really help you out. Now, as I said, I'll be using Xcode only, and please keep in mind that this video is made to teach, so it's not some easy, fast way of getting to the goal where I just hand out a lot of code that you can copy-paste. No, I'm gonna be showing you the approaches that I've taken in order to make a tower defense game, and I'm also going to be showing you pre-programming practices. Now, what this means is, well, I'll show you in a bit, but it's something I do whenever I'm about to make an application, and it's going to be step by step. As I said, we're going to be doing one little bit at a time. We won't by a long shot be able to make a tower defense game in just one video. It will be too big and too much for you as a viewer to grasp at one time. I think it's better when you're learning, when you're learning, you watch a little bit at a time, try that out, and then you watch more instead of, you know, trying to make a game in 15 minutes. And obviously, I assume you know Xcode and Objective-C programming. So what are we gonna do today? Now that we are done with the introduction, let's take a look at the list. Well, we're gonna create the creep class. Now, the creep class is the class that's responsible for creating creeps, our bad guys. And we're also gonna be making a creep store class. It's a singleton class, and if you don't know what a singleton class is, I have a video at the link there you can check out. But that creep store is going to hold each creep so that we can access all the creeps on the screen, and that'll be very useful later on, as you'll see. We're going to make a gaming area and a small main menu screen, and we are going to do a little work at the view controller for the gaming area. Now, this is something I like to do every time before I get started. I make a sketch. Now, this is actually a pretty sketch. When I jot the thoughts down on a piece of paper, you can't even read it. But it helps to try and draw sketches of what you're going to make. And if you ever encounter problems, to try and sketch out what you're doing on a piece of paper. Because if you're trying to work it all out in your head, you can't really make sense of it, but by making diagrams, you get a better overview, and it can really help you. So, with that out of the way, this is the view controller, the main menu, and at first we're just going to make a UI button here, and that UI button is going to fire a seek that's going to launch the gameplay view area. Obviously, this is very simple because we're just getting started. So that's how our menu system is going to look like. Now let's take a look at the gameplay view down here. This is how it's going to look when we're done, hopefully, if everything goes well. These red dots here, they are creeps, and as you can see down here, they are made from the creep.h class, and we will have each creep have a health and a movement speed and an ID number. Now, the ID number is something that I use in a lot of my classes because it helps you identify which type of creep we're talking about if it gets necessary later on. And as I said, we're going to have a creep store. It is going to hold a reference to all these creeps that are going to be present on the screen, because that enables our GameViewController to do some work, for instance, to make them move. And this is actually what we're going to do today, so let's just jump right to it. I have Xcode here, and I'm going to be creating a single view application. We're going to call it Tower Defense and it's going to be for the iPhone. Don't need that, and we'll use automatic reference counting and storyboards. That's fine. Alrighty. Okay, let me just gonna increase the font size so you can see what I'm actually doing. I think 24, that should do it. Alright, now let's get started. The first thing we're gonna do is to create our interface, because we can't really test that much without the interface working. And I'm gonna set the orientation to landscape, because that's the orientation we're gonna use throughout the whole game. And as I sketched out, we are gonna be needing another view. So let's go ahead and drag this in. And this one needs to be in landscape as well, like that. Now this is our main menu, and this little arrow indicates that when the application launches, it's going to show you this screen first. So obviously we need to make a button here, just a basic UI button. We'll call it play. It's very simple and straightforward. We're going to make a seek or a segue that that gives us access to the gameplay view. We don't really need an identifier for this, because that's all it's actually going to do. So what is more interesting is this view here, and we're actually not going to do anything, well, except maybe make a light gray background color. And we need a view controller for that, so let's just create this. New file, create a view controller. And we're going to call it GameViewController. There we go. Then we make this one be a part of this by typing GameViewController up here, and now we should be good to go. So as I said, the first thing we're going to do is create the creep class. Creep, and it's just going to be basic subclass of NSObjects. There we go. Alright. As I sketched out, we need our creeps to have some health. Because, I mean, wouldn't be much of a tower defense game if they were invincible. Whoops. It's not gonna... Okay. I just messed up there. Add property int health. And we need another property. It's going to be a float, and it's going to be the move speed. And we need another property, also an int, called the creep ID. That's actually all that we need for this creep. But obviously we need an initialization method as well. And I'm going to make a designated initializer, init with health, and health, and move speeds. Speeds, and creep ID. ID. Like this. Oh, sorry, I can't use the ID because it's a prefix. The ID. And we're also gonna call this the health, just so it isn't exactly the same as the health property. Whoops. Alright, so with the designated initializer in place, our three properties, let's go ahead and make or implement our designated initializer. Self equals supernet. Oops. If self, we are going to set the instance variables. Health equals health, and move speed will be equal to speed, and the creep ID will be the ID. Return self, and let's just override the normal init methods to call our designated initializer. Not that we're going to use this initialization method, but it's good programming practice. So we're just going to return self init with health, and it's going to have 10 health and 2 movement and 0 ID, because then we need, or then we know that if someone makes a creep with 0 as the creep ID, they call the wrong initialization method. But we're not going to do that. We are going to focus on this one whenever we're going to create a creep. And that actually concludes our creep method, for now at least. So let's make the creep store so we have a way of accessing all our creeps. And it's going to be creep store, and also subclass of any subject, and as I said, it's going to be a singleton class, so it needs the class method that returns a creep store object. We'll call it the creep store. Well, just need the asterisks. And also you should, what's the expected method? I'm in the implementation section. Well, that isn't too good. There at the interface, declare this. There we go. And this is something that can happen because, well, obviously, when I'm just throwing this out at the get-go, there are bound to be some errors here and there, so bear with me, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now that we created this, or declared the creep store class method, we need to implement it. And I won't go into too much detail here because I actually already made a video on singleton classes that you can check out. So I'll just initialize this up, making a static creep store for nil, so that we only have one of these objects present at any given time. And if it hasn't been created yet, we create it by calling supraunlock with zone and init, and then we simply return it. But in order for this to work properly, we need to excuse me, we need to implement the initialization method, as you always do when you're making custom objects. And it's actually very basic. There we go. Now we have our creep store, but it doesn't really have any properties, so it's actually not very useful. So let's give it the one and only property atomic strong reference to an NS mutable array called active creeps. There we go. And in the initialization method, we make the active creeps and no empty array. Alright, that actually concludes these two classes. We have creep, so we are able to make a creep object, and we have a creep store. But if we take a look at the creep here, we have no idea how this creep looks like. And if we don't have any idea how it looks, we can't really make it, can we? So let's go ahead and make another property, non-atomic strong reference, to a UI image view, calling it the creep img view. And this is actually the visual representation of our creep, so that when we initialize a creep, we pass in an image to set in the creep image view, so that the creep actually looks like something, and we can specify what the creep needs to look like. So let's just add this at the end of our initialization method, and creep image. Just going to pass in an image, the image, and we're just going to add this there, and then we are going to create the visual representation of our creep down here. Now we need to make a new UI image view. So let's call the alloc and the init with frame method, because we need to specify how big it's going to be by calling the ctrect_make. X and Y coordinates are its starting position on the screen, and for now we're just going to set them to 0, and we'll get back to those. The width and height makes us specify, well, as they say, how high and how tall, wide it should be. We are going to make this creep 100 times 100. And we need to add the image passed in to this method, like this. And that actually concludes the creep. Let's see if we can get this creep present on our game view over here. Now, as you just saw before, we need to specify some coordinates now as starting points for our creep. So if I try and drag this label in here, and I go in here, I can actually see the X and Y coordinates of this label. So this actually enables you to specify the exact starting position of your creep. And our creeps are going to move from the right to the left side. So we try and put this label somewhere out here. We see that we are approximately at 134y and 563x. Alright, so we are going to specify that as our starting coordinates. The x was 565. Y coordinate, they were 140. So when we create our creep, it should start right around there. Okay, now it's time to work on our GameViewController. We have the two classes that we actually need. We should be able to make a creep, and we have a store that holds a pointer to all the active creeps. And I am going to show you in just a minute why that was important. First of all, we need to import the creep store in the GameViewController so that we can access the creeps. But we also need to import the creep class so we can actually create our creeps. Now, our GameViewController is going to have a move method. It's not going to return any values, simply going to call it move. Now, what this method is going to do is access all our creeps in the creep store and move them. We are going to have a spawning method as well. So spawn creeps. There we go. And it's going to be responsible for creating our creeps, adding them to the creep store so that they can be moved. Alright. Let's just take this down here. The only thing we need is actually the viewDidLoad method, so I'm just gonna put it up here. Now, when the view first loads, we need to create our creeps. Now, this spawning method, well, that could be a good idea. But I actually think instead of using the spawning method, well, strike that. We're gonna make a property, make it non-atomic strong, and make it an NS just normal NS array, and we're going to call it the creeps, so that when the application loads, we are simply going to fill this array up with creeps. Let's see how that works. Orient y. Oh, first we need to actually make the array, and it needs to be mutable. And this mutable array new, because we are going to enumerate through it and add objects. There we go. And this mutable array, the creeps. Alright, so we need to create some creeps and stuff them in to this creep method. So let's go ahead and do that. The creeps. Oh. Int y equals 0, and if y is less than 10, we increment y. So we can go through this method 10 times, and thus creates 10 creeps. So let's try and make our very first creep. The creep equals creep allocate, and init with health. How much health are we going to give these? Well, we'll give them 10. Their movement speed, 1.7. ID, going to be 1. The creep image view is going to be a UI image. Image names creep1. And there we go. Then we just need to add this to the creeps. Add objects, the creep, and this actually creates 10 creep for us. Well, that's a wonderful thing. And when it is done creating those 10 creeps, we are going to call our creep store and have it add those objects. Creep store, the creep store, active creeps, there it is. Add objects from array, the creeps array. Alright, so let's just examine this code. Well, we make the creep method, stuff it up with 10 creeps, and then we add all those creeps to the creep store. Now, we could just in this method directly keep adding the creeps to this creep store, but I'm just going to keep those things separated for now, because as we go on with the developing, the way we create creeps are going to change a bit, and we're going to move some work from the GameViewController over to the other classes. But for now, and just to make this video as short as possible, this is all we're going to do. Now, what do we have so far? We have creeps, we have them being created with an image. Do they get spawned? No, they don't get spawned. Alright, so that's what we need to look at now. We need to make these creeps visible on our GameViewController. Now, how can we do this? Well, we could just throw them all in there at once, but that wouldn't really work. And that's when we need our spawning method. So let's go ahead and declare that now. Spawn creep. Gonna implement it. Whoops. There we go. Spawn creep. Now, this method is gonna take a creep from the creeps array, add it to the screen, and then add it to the creep store. And this actually makes this line a little stupid, because remember back when we started the video, I said active creeps. Now that means creeps actually present on the screen. But when we add these 10 creeps, they aren't present on the screen at all. So this line is actually a no-goer. We need it in the spawn creep method, because that is when we take the creeps from the creeps array, add them to the screen, and then they become active. So let's do that. Self view, add subview. Alright, I'm just gonna head on myself there. First, let's isolate a creep. The creep from the creeps object at index 0. Now this gives us the next creep in line from the creeps array. Now that we have that one isolated, let's destroy remove object. Let's destroy it from the creeps array. So we remove the object at index 0 because we already isolated it here as the creep. And thus when we remove it, the next time the spawn method is going to be called, it's going to be the next creep in the method. So now that we have the creep isolated, we can add its image to the screen simply by saying self view add subview the creep dot creep img view. And that's actually all the spawning method takes. It's gonna take out a creep, remove object at index, add it to the view, it becomes active, and thus we need to add it to our active array. The creep store, and it was called active creeps, add object, the creep. And we're almost done in this method, but there could be a problem here, because if we keep on doing this, at one point we're going to access a creep which is non-existent, because when the array is empty and we call this method, we will crash. I mean really crash. I mean the end, crash, boom. So we need some kind of fail-safe. And we could say that, well, if the creep.count is equal to or less than 0, well, that means the array is empty. We return. We simply break out of the method. And this little line here actually makes sure that we won't crash. Right? Now we can spawn the creeps, add them to the screen, but will they do anything? No, they won't really do anything. They'll just stand there and be spawned on top of each other, and that's pretty much it. And that's when we're going to implement our move method, because we need these buggers to move. And we are going to make another method to our creep class, and we're also going to call it move creep, just move. And this puts what's down here? Oh. Alright, I'm terribly sorry about that. Let me just put this out. Alright, I'm terribly sorry about that one, guys. Now, let's get back to it. Gotta remember to log off Skype, I guess. We altered the init method here, so we need to add this, and I'm going to use the same image, creep1. And as I said, I'm going to have these small hiccups where things fall apart a little bit, but it's part of the process. Yeah, where were we? The move method. Let's just dig down to this one. We're almost done with the tutorial. We're going to make the creeps move, and then we can conclude it. There we go. Now, and this is actually going to be very simple, because we just need the creeps to move. And what does that mean? Well, if we try to pretend like this label here is our creep, and we press here to have it move in the direction what the creep's moving, we can see what happens is that the x value gets lesser or smaller and smaller and smaller. So we need to decrement the x value of our creeps. So how can we do that? Well, we need to do it on the visual representation, and that is the creep image view. So we actually need to set a new frame for it. Not a frame, a center. And the center is the middle of the creep. When we make the frame, like here we say, we give these coordinates, that's actually not the center. That is the very corner, the left corner, upper corner of the image view, if you think of it as a square, which it is. So we actually need to set a center here to those values. Set center to 565. CG point make 565 and 140. And now this makes the creep spawn exactly at that point, whereas that would be around 100 pixels off. So down here we need to set our center property, and we need it to be less. So but we can't just say, well, 565 minus 10, because then it would move once and not further. So we need to get the current center property of the creep image view and then decrement it by our move speed value. And we don't want to do any work on the Y value, because that's for another tutorial. We'll make it move through waypoints. But this should actually make the creep move. So all we need to do in the move method here is enumerate through all the creeps and the creep store active creeps. So I'm just going to copy this line down here. Active creeps. So for creep, the creep in this array, we're going to do some work. What this method does is that it takes, it goes through every single object in our active creeps, meaning we get to do some work on each active creep. And the way we're going to do this is simply to call the move method that we created in our creep class. So this creep we made up here, that is the creep we're currently doing work on. So all we need to do is actually just call the move method, and it should handle the rest. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have everything set up, if all goes smoothly, that is. But we actually need to get it going because we need to get the creep spawned and we need to start moving. Alright? And a good way to do that is in the viewDidLoad method to create an NS timer and schedule timer with time interval. And we need the big method down here. Now, I also have a video on NS timers you can check out if you need to clear up on that subject. But what this enables us to do is call methods at a certain time interval. And we need to spawn a creep. So let's spawn a creep every 1.5 seconds. The target is self because it is a method in this view controller. And the selector, the method, is called spawn creep. And we don't pass in any information. And do we want it to repeat? Yes, we do. Now, this goes a little against good programming practices because we actually keep on repeating this method, and at a certain time we're just going to call a dead method because it's going to fall under this. So it's just a dead loop that will keep executing. So obviously we need a fix for that, but that's for another video. So now we get the creeps spawned. Now we just need to move them. And we're going to make another NS timer. And we are going to move them every 0.1 second. Same as above, we just call the move method, no user information, and we want this to repeat. Yes, we do. Alright, well, I think we should take this for a spin. See if I already know something that's gonna pop up. We haven't added a creep, so we have no image. Alright, let's just grab this little fella in because he's actually our small little creepy boy. Look at him. There we go. Now we should be all good to go. We just need to change the orientation. There we go. This is our play button, and when we press this, hopefully it will spawn the creeps and they'll start moving. And nothing happens. What a... oh yeah, there they are. Look at them. Beautiful, beautiful. They are lagging a bit in their movements, and that's an easy fix. We just make it call this method 10 times faster. Check it out. And there, now they are incredibly fast, a little too fast. But again, it's an easy fix. We can also fix it in another way. We can go in the initialization method here and set the move speed down to 1.5 and then set this to 0.05. See how this runs. Yeah, well, you can dabble around with this all you want, but this is actually what we were looking to achieve today, and it built it at the first go, so it's a plus. obviously this isn't really a tower defense game because there's a lot of problems here. Well, first of all, these objects, when they go off screen, they're not getting destroyed. They're actually still sitting in memory as active creeps and still moving. So there's a lot of work to be done, but this is what we looked to achieve, and it actually took 40 minutes to make just this, and there's going to be a lot of changes in the way we create creeps and in the way we're spawning them. But it's a good start, because when you're making your first tower defense game from scratch, you're going to make something and you're going to get it to work. But then later on in development, you're going to realize some smarter way of doing it. And then you go back and change some of your code. And it is these kind of practices that one day enables you to make a tower defense game with the best programming practices and the best techniques from the get-go, saving you a lot of time and a lot of headache. Alright, well, I think that's it for today, guys. I hope you like the way I'm doing the tutorial. I'm trying to explain as much as I can, showing you some sketches. Obviously I can sound, well, a bit rusty. I make mistakes here and there, but it can be hard trying to program and talk at the same time. But hopefully you learn something, and I hope that you will watch the next part. If this gets enough viewers, I will continue with the series, but obviously, because obviously this isn't a tower defense game, we need to do a lot work. Alright, well, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I strongly recommend that you try and make this on your own now. Alright, have fun, guys, and I'll see you next time.